And that's a whole other conversation. If it's very extreme behavior, then yes, it could be narcissistic personality disorder. Why would that happen? Because narcissistic personality disorder is an infantile disorder of grandiosity and delusion, where the person has had a total break from reality. So they live in a delusional world. In many ways, it's akin to a kind of schizophrenia.
And that protects them because they went through trauma.
The type of trauma, so again, I can't speak for the orthodoxy, I speak for my opinion. Some people agree, some people don't. To me, it's the type of trauma that the child experienced and the genetic predisposition of the child in response to that trauma. Typically, narcissistic personality disorder specifically requires a polarity in which the child is being abused and simultaneously being told, you're the worst thing imaginable on earth, nothing you ever do is right, you're the scum of the earth or worse. And they're also getting a signal, you're an angelic, godlike being and you are perfect. And in that confusion, the personality splits.
So next question is, you said that there was no reward and it was all risk. Is there such a personality type whereby the prospect of losing everything is the reward because that's getting their rocks off?
Yes, absolutely. And you spent some of your time with them in Arizona. They are called psychopaths. And our notion of a psychopath for the world is absolutely historically rooted in the American penal system. And people have tried to argue this with me. It is absolutely, inarguably true that orthodox psychology, mainstream view of psychopathy, is an American concept, and it's specifically the standard or the mean, statistically, of the American penal system in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, which is why it's a changing concept, because it doesn't always apply as much today. It's an issue that we're arguing over. There's a big debate about it. But yes, in psychopathy, there is a fearlessness. There is a desire for risk. These are not necessarily like low IQ people. You can have high IQ psychopaths and you can say to them, do you know what the risk is of this? And they'll be like, yeah, I do. It's great. And they love that. That was the point, wasn't it?
Sounds like wild, man.
So yeah, there is that we're away from narcissism and we're more towards psychopathy there. But of course, narcissism is very frequently comorbid with psychopathy. They're frequently diagnosed together.
With these TV presenters then, would you say there's a bit of both?
I don't, because I've not met them and because I've not spoken to them, I don't want to be the guy who's like, oh, I'm into narcissism, psychopathy, narcissist, psychopath, narcissist, psychopath. But seeing as you're asking, if you said to me, okay, you have to view this through a narcissistic, psychopathic lens, does this match? And I would say, yeah, okay. Let's assume just as a philosophical experiment that it matches and that I agree. How does it match? High risk, low reward scenarios. There's an obsessive element to this. You know, if I took either of these men out of the situation and just said to them as like quietly, privately, as a therapist, what do you hope to gain here? What is this? And they would say, oh, like sexual fulfillment. Really? Tell me about sexual fulfillment. What, elucidate that. Explain to me what is the end of this fantasy? Because you're running a fantasy. How does this end? What's the perfect scenario? What are we doing? They wouldn't be able to answer because they're trapped. And I think this is a narcissistic psychopathic problem specifically, is to get obsessed with a particular way of gratifying your needs and achieving success that is fantasy based. Can't be realized.
Why can't they go on pH like everybody else in the world?
Yeah, or pH is yes. I am so clean. I didn't know what you were referring to there for a second.
What it is?
No,
you do.
The special site.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think this is, again, to take the human view, I think a lot of fantasy functions this way, not to drift off into psychoanalytic theory too much, but there's a guy I follow who's a Freudian, he's Slovenian, he's called Slavoj Žižek, and he would say that the point of fantasy is you can never fulfill it, you don't want to. The fulfillment of fantasy is the beginning of depression. You want to maintain the fantasy. So you said, where do you see the narcissistic psychopathy? And I say, this seems like fantasy-based behavior. Like, what are you really doing? How do you fulfill this? And the point is not to fulfill it. The point is to just kick the can down the road and to desire for its own sake.
And how can you tell the clear difference between a psychopath and a narcissist?
You can't.
You can't.
There'll be people who claim you can. By the DSM-5 definition that I largely use, which is voted into existence, as I'm sure you know, by the American Psychiatric Association. They just agree. There's no blood tests for this. There's no brain scans for it. They just go, oh, we think it's this. There are different tests, but they very, very frequently cross over because fundamentally, psychopathy in its original historical form was a way of saying, look, this is a kind of moral degeneracy, which we can't talk today. You're not allowed to say moral degeneracy in the psychology clinic because it should be an amoral scenario. But it is a form of moral degeneracy. These are people who lack a moral core.
So you were talking about narcissists and psychopaths, the difficulty in identifying them. So living with the psychopaths, then, one thing I noticed is there's an intimidating level of they have no fear.
Yeah.
Do the narcissists have that, or some of the narcissist pussies?
Some of the narcissists are pussies, and that can be, it's one of these things that it makes it a little bit confusing. So if you have a narcissistic psychopath, maybe one of the things that's happening is they're switching between states. So if you get them on one day, you might have like, it's quite common for narcissists to be hypochondriacs. So they'll be very, very defensive of themselves. They mustn't touch this. They're allergic to everything, blah, blah. And then the next day, they're ready to jump in a car, take a sawn-off shotgun and go and poke it in somebody's nose. And you think, oh, did you clean that sawn-off before you? They don't care when they've flipped the switch. And so the difficulty now is in psychology, because it has been observed so many times, are these really fixed personality disorders? Or are these like post-traumatic stress responses, almost like alters, dissociative identity, multiple personality disorder? People switch between different personalities.
Love that movie, Split.
The Split, yeah, Split is a good one. And so you've got the narcissist would be, let's make him up. He's like a grandiose hypochondriac. He's above everybody and he's an intellectual. But he flips and he's super scared of the world and he hides in his books and he has this delusional version of himself. Flip psychopath. Somebody pushes his buttons in the wrong way and he's capable of intense violence for short periods of time. So what is he then? Because his actions have now fallen outside of our definition of MPD. Because an MPD typically wouldn't be violent because they're very conscious of their reputation. They're very conscious of how they look. They'll do emotional violence. These are the people who'll call you up and say you're a piece of shit, but they won't text you you're a piece of shit because they don't want the evidence there. They don't want it seen. So they're quite careful. Psychopath, couldn't care less.
They'll go all the way.
All the way. All the way.
And you're so experienced in this subject. Can you remember the first time you came in encounter with a narcissist?
When I saw my father when I was born and said, hello, father. Oh, yeah. He went to prison for the things he did.
Really?
Yeah, he did a long stretch. Yeah, bad man, really, really bad man. The narcissism and psychopathy and borderline personality disorder, I personally feel is very prevalent where we're from in the Northwest. I think a lot of this Irish immigrant working class population that were financially on the top of the world for a couple of centuries because of the slave trade. We were the second London, produced a ton of nouveau riche billionaires by today's standards, not just millionaires. And then when the slave trade died and the shipping died, it all went. And it left cultural trauma there that has left people don't like me saying it, obviously, but I don't give a shit. The Northwest, like Scousers in the surrounding areas, people from the world, people where you're from, witness, chip on the shoulder, big chip on the shoulder. They'll pretend that they're working class, salt of the earth, but they cannot wait to stab the mates in the back just to buy that Ferrari or sell some more coke or do whatever it takes to get ahead. So narcissism and psychopathy is, I think it's rife where we're from. So yeah, in my family, I saw it.
I've got to be careful here. I don't want to have a backlash from the people of Widnes. I love the people of Widnes, and they are the salt of the earth.
All of you, please don't harass me when I'm walking down Liverpool High Street.
Widnes massive.
Yay!
So because I'm a southerner, I'm a better person, I'm less likely to be a narcissist.
Well, that's a whole other issue. Let's not go too far.
Who's the bigger narcissist, me or Jen?
Oh my God. Right.
Joking. Right,
would like
Richard.
to-
I don't want to leave here. I'm leaving a massive argument behind
Get
me.
along.
No, I would like to
Jen's
point
got
out-
pregnancy hormones kicking in. This is not a good road to go down. You did this to me!
ruin my life. Actually, this is quite an interesting one. 2.5 years ago, when I first met Shaun, he sat me down in his front room and made me do a psychopath test and a narcissist test online.
You know what? Who I'm working with. The BBC should have done this, and they wouldn't be in the trouble they're in today.
Does that make
I
him...
think ahead. He's going to spew out his tea. He's holding on.
Oh my God.
That's a clip right there.
I'm going to get forehead sweat on there. It's like, come on, don't do this. Not live. Come on.
how accurate are these tests?
It depends. No, you see, it depends on how honest you're being with the test. I mean, they're pretty easy to deceive. Like, you can see a narcissism test a mile away and be like, do you love yourself and feel more entitled than other people? Yes. Oh, you're a narcissist. There are really, really good ones that you can't trick. But a lot of the ones you can find online, you know what they're asking.
I think I even played up on it to make it seem like I was more,
Yeah.
psychopathic.
Just out of spite for being
For Shaun.
forced.
So Richard, I'm going to ask you the same question again. We like long answers on this channel. And I know you've got the story of the woman, and I've watched that video you've made several times. I've been that fascinated by your own personal story, because we love personal stories on this channel. Jen's not seen it. Can you explain what happened?
I'm guessing a past relationship.
With my ex?
Yours, yeah.
Oh God. It depends on which one you're referring to.
You said you spent 2 or 3 years with her, and it took 2 or 3 years to get over it.
Oh, that one. Yeah. Well, see, now that's partly my own fault. He said, as a codependent, it was my fault that she abused me, of course, because I was blending psychology and psychotherapy into the relationship. So when I met her, I knew that she was a refugee from a war zone. It was Bosnia. And I knew that she came with PTSD. And so there was the fact that she was from a very different culture. She spoke primary language was a different language to mine. And PTSD was in the mix. So a lot of bad behavior, that is just bad behavior, was dealt with as a psychotherapist, which is completely wrong. Psychotherapy really is great, and the psychotherapeutic coordinates are great only in therapy. So we talk safe spaces in therapy. We talk active listening. We talk honoring the client's subjective experience above all else. It's perfect in therapy. It doesn't belong in your hospital. It doesn't go in your bank. It shouldn't be in the military. All of that is a kind of psychologization of the world. And I psychologize my relationship. I should have held a stronger boundary to say, well, you have PTSD, you have mental health issues, you see a therapist. I am your boyfriend. That's it. And so it went on for too long.
Before we get to that, hold on a sec.
Go on.
How did you meet this person, and what was the relationship like in the beginning?
I met her at one of my seminars in London, and in the beginning, it was she's a very, very good looking girl, and I was 37. She's the best looking girl I'd ever been with, and it was great. It was a very sexual relationship, and it was very affectionate. She did a lot of mirroring. She figured out what I wanted to say to me, and she fed back into my own latent narcissism. She appealed to my intellectual narcissism. She's a bright girl. So her background is science.
What kind of things would have been said then?
Oh God. Basically finding subtle and covert ways to validate my worldview. And whatever I said, I think the world works like this, she'd be like, that's absolutely true. And you're probably a genius for thinking that. And I'd think, yes, she's probably right. I probably am a genius of some sort.
So feeding the ego, proper
Total
stroking.
Ego feed.
How old were you when you met?
I was 37, she was 28. And I had been through a bad relationship, but it was... So the bad relationship that went before was much more obvious. Like anybody should have seen that coming. The girl was more histrionic, so more obviously openly sexual and flirtatious. This girl was conservative and she was an intellectual. So I was like, oh, this one's fine. This is going to be different. And it really wasn't.
How long was the honeymoon period?
Honestly, not that long. I think the first time you can't analyze somebody you've lived with. You can't analyze your girlfriend. I could see traits of histrionic, borderline, narcissism, psychopathy there, which is the full deck. That's called the dark tetrad.
But what did she actually do to make you think that?
Oh, God.
You're making him relive it.
Flashbacks. One night we were sat on the couch. See, my PTSD doesn't even allow me to remember this properly.
Oh,
we were sat on the couch, we were watching TV, and I said something about somebody that was on the TV, and she went into an argument that I realized years later was with her ex-boyfriend, and she'd confused me with her ex-boyfriend, and she was standing over me within 4 minutes, screaming at me and talking to me as though I was somebody else. You got to remember, this is 11 o'clock at night, and I love this girl. I think she's the best thing since sliced bread. And I'm looking at her like, what are you talking about? And who are you talking to? Like, what? You're making references to things. I have no idea what's going on. So I do think, having said, I don't want to psychologize the relationship, I do think she did have quite severe PTSD, and she was a bit delusional when sorry for hitting the mic, when she went into a strong emotional flashback. She did actually lose her grip of reality. And she would shake, like her lips would turn white, and she would shake, and her voice would sound very, very strange. She had blue eyes, but they would go very, very dark. And you could see when she'd gone. There was no reasoning with her.
Was that something she just cycled into, or were there triggers during the day?
I was going to say, was she under the influence during these?
She had 2 glasses of wine, and you said, is there something during the day? I didn't pick it up. But looking back, there must have been. I probably said or did something, or said or did completely innocuous things, and then her perception altered it to be like, oh, he's just rejected you, or he's just told you he loved his ex-girlfriend more than you, or he's just looked at that girl over there where probably I was looking at like a cake shop or something. This is the kind of thing that happens in normal relationships. It's a perfectly normal thing to feel jealous. But if you're heavily emotionally dysregulated or carrying a personality disorder, that spike of jealousy, because the brain's HPA axis is dysregulated. So it's like a physical problem when people are highly traumatized. That's the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal gland axis. Without turning this into a neurobiology lecture, let's say it's like your threat assessment system. It's observably damaged in people who are highly traumatized. So that spike of jealousy, where you'd be like, what did you mean when you said that? And you can have like a normal conversation. Like, oh, I meant this. Oh, okay. I thought you meant that. No. I didn't mean that. And it's done. She would just sit there and go, oh, so you love your ex-girlfriend more than me, do you? But I didn't pick up on that. Her adrenaline would spike and spike and spike during the day. A couple of glasses of wine. I'd say something innocuous about something on the TV. Bang. She'd be in the stratosphere and arguing maybe with her dad, maybe with her ex-boyfriend, maybe with... Who knows? Who knows who she was arguing with, but it wasn't me. There were other incidents where she would begin arguments in the living room on her own while I was asleep with herself, and then come in and start screaming at me halfway through an argument that she was having with her version of me in her head. So I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning with a lunatic screaming, spitting in my face, because she was already 40 minutes into an argument with me. I'd be like, hang on. Just let me wake up. We catch up with where you're at. So yeah,
going back to the first argument, the first incident.
Yeah.
How did you diffuse it? And when you had diffused it, did you just think that was a one-off at the time?
Oh, you're asking good questions. I think I did manage to diffuse it through. I think I sort of like, I lasted the round. I didn't do some amazing magical psychological trickery to stop her. I just endured. I just kept going. And then I think she burnt out, and I saw her come back from whatever psychotic episode she was having, and she started to see me again. And then I made a joke, put some humor into it, and it calmed it down. But from that point on, that was only 6 weeks in, I had no excuse to do what I did next, which was I moved to Sweden and started living with her and got into a rental contract and financially.
You thought that was a one-off?
No, Shaun.
How many episodes did you have before you moved to Sweden?
But 4, 5. I knew that she was mentally sick. I knew that she was mentally sick, but I have my own issues. I had my own fantasy. And I have my own obsessions. Like, I really wanted to be with her. I thought that she was the perfect partner for me. So this is my own fantasy kicked in. So I started sweeping these things under the carpet and being like, oh, we can fix it. We can fix it with therapy. We'll fix it with time. We'll fix it with love. No, you won't. Never think that. That's not what love is for. And so, yeah, I went in knowing that it was going to be a rough ride.
And did the move to Sweden help? Did it calm down after that?
Not at all.
I knew you were going to say that.
Not at all. She hates, her family fled Bosnia to Sweden. Sweden opened its doors to Bosnian refugees during the Yugoslavian wars, during the Bosnian genocide. And she hated Sweden. She was bullied in Sweden. She was called, a lot of her PTSD wasn't just from Bosnia, it was actually in Sweden. She was called a dirty. Obviously, being from Bosnia, there's a different look, so people could identify her. She then spent the rest of her life trying to make herself look as Swedish as possible, with her dress code and dyeing her hair and all the rest of it. And I was like saying, so you don't need to do this, you know. So there was a big split in her own self-image, and you know, all due respect to her, like, life was really hard for her, really, really hard. But she didn't need a boyfriend. She needed therapy.
And how did this come to an end?
Hold on, let's not jump to the end. There's a lot to this.
I'm missing some serious.
Look at his eyes. Look at his eyes.
He's done an hour. He does an hour on this. Yeah. So Richard.
I'm excited now.
Richard, is it trauma bonding?
Is this traumatizing? Yes, Shaun, it is. Go on.
Is it codependency, or is it both? The fact that you're going with this at this beginning of the relationship, because there's 3 years, isn't there?
Yeah, 3 years.
We're only 6 weeks in.
Oh God!
Don't jump to the end, John.
Oh God. So, well, I was trauma bonded in the end because, and this will be useful for the audience. I think, like, it's very confusing when you're in an abusive relationship. Intellectually, cognitively, you know the person's awful. And you can tell your mum what she's done. Your mum will be like, wow, that's awful. And your mates will go, oh, that's awful. But you still want to talk to them. And they're still highly significant for you. And I think the reason is very, very simple. The more somebody hurts you, the more your brain associates significance with that person. So the pain they cause you becomes commensurate with the significance they have in your life. That's trauma bonding. So absolutely, I was trauma bonded to her. Why didn't I say, this is not love. I want to be loved and respected. This is nonsense. I'll find somebody else. Yes, codependency. Yes, a lack of self-worth. Yes, childhood trauma. All of these things that go into making the melange of codependency. Codependency is like a description of a pattern of behavior. It doesn't function as a clinical entity. There's something called dependent personality disorder, which is adjacent to it. But codependency is more of a pop psychology way of describing hyper-submissive, excessively fawning patterns of behavior, typically inside of abusive relationships. You're just not saying no when you should be. But I mean, I had, like, my own childhood was very, very rough. I had loads of issues around attachment, loads of issues around women. And to a degree, I thought, well, this is what love is, and B, this is as good as it's ever going to get for me. Yes, I'm being abused, but she's really hot and the sex is nice.
So during the first year then, what were the major events that happened with her?
God. In the first year.
Yeah.
You're really buzzing off this, aren't you?
He loves
I
it.
mean, it's a true story, isn't it? There's a lot of psychological jargon, but people relate to true stories because they give the lesson, I
And yet
think.
his eyes gleam.
The changing colour as we speak, going dark. My ears are going pointy.
So the first 3 months we were sort of like, she was visiting me in the UK, I was visiting her in Sweden, and then we moved in together. That 6 months was a winter in Sweden where she had to work, and she'd spent the last 5 years with an ex-boyfriend. Without revealing too much, how would I say this? So they were basically in a holiday type environment doing scientific work that permitted them to they lived poor, but they had a great lifestyle, and they were scientists doing science and publishing papers. So she was, I mean, that just doesn't exist. Most people who do a degree in biology are never, it's like people who do degrees in psychology. Most of us never do therapy. We'll never sit opposite a person and say, how does that make you feel? She hit the jackpot by attaching herself to a professor. So she didn't have to work. She had a high degree of entitlement. Then she met me, she'd finished with him, she'd come back to Sweden, and she had to go work. And I didn't know at the time what the problem was. She just hated working. She just hated going to work. And she had an office, it was a bureaucratic office job within a Swedish government body. And she loathed it, but she couldn't say, I hate living a normal life, I feel entitled to more. She said, I'm depressed because the work I was doing, let's say, they were studying grasshoppers, they weren't. But she says, I miss my grasshoppers. I miss all the research I did there. I set all of this grasshopper studying up for him in this country, let's say it's Italy. And now he's enjoying the benefits of it, and I'm depressed. And I was like, oh, so it's grasshoppers you need? Yes. And then you won't be depressed? No. Okay then, darling, I shall take you to a country and I will pay for you to live there, and you can do grasshopper studying in a nice foreign country and do it voluntarily. Because as I say, nobody's going to pay you to do this. Nobody cares except scientists. There's no money. There's very little money in science. And so that's what I did. I paid and took her to another country and said, okay, now volunteer, and that's your job. You'll be happy now, won't you? That wasn't the problem. The problem was that she needed therapy. She was really, really mentally sick. So my subjective experience daily was to live with somebody who, on the basis of either something I did, so the things I did, maybe there's things I did that were actually genuinely wrong, or they were innocuous and perceived as being awful, or they just happened inside of her head. And I cycled through that on a daily basis, and I became fearful. And I lived with somebody who I was afraid of, because if she went into a mood swing, maybe she would be silent with me for 2 days. Maybe she would start screaming at me. Maybe she would start throwing things around the house. She would even self-harm if she was enraged with me. One day she nearly cut off the tip of her thumb because she was so angry with me, but couldn't tell me that she was angry with me.
How did that happen?
She thrust her hand into the dishwasher, with the knives were pointed upward, and in a rage, and yeah, she nearly, and then she wouldn't let me help her. She wouldn't let me stem the blood flow. She wouldn't let me take her to hospital. She just wanted to sit on the floor and cry and bleed with her thumb hanging off. Oh, So I never knew when she would come in. I never knew what I was going to get. So I started to fear phone calls. I became fearful of my phone. That would give me adrenaline spike. And the sound of the door opening would give me an adrenaline spike. And I could hear myself fawning and trying to set up the environment and the interaction in such a way that she wouldn't go psychotic. It's a miserable, wretched life. It's the life of a slave.
How many months into the relationship were you when it was a daily, were you working on eggshells daily?
We'd gotten to this as a daily routine by the 4th month.
Fourth month?
She wasn't pretending after month 4. She wasn't pretending.
Month.
And when did you notice it was starting to play a part in your mental health?
Oh God, I put on, it was my mum. My mum was laughing at me because I was so fat. I put on by the 4th month. So by the December in Sweden, I'd gone up to 105 kilos. And when I got back from Spain in August, right before I met her of that year, so that's only like a 4-month difference, I think I'd put on like 15 kilos in about 4 months. Wasn't sleeping. My glands kept swelling up. If there was any flu in the environment, I would get it. And my physical health went down the shitter rapidly. Because
they say narcissists are like energy vampires. They will drain you of everything.
Yeah, you'll become physically sick. There's a lot of, God, what is it called? Immune system disorders that I think we will find in time are absolutely positively correlated with narcissism. Because what you're doing, I think, to go a little bit esoteric for a moment, a bit of a hippie at heart, I think you're saying to yourself, don't defend yourself, let this happen. And it's almost like sending a signal to your body and the defense systems of your body, switch off, switch off, switch off, let it happen, let it happen. Instead of being like, no, there's a threat, fight it, stand up for yourself, say no, let's do this. You're saying no, just be inert, let it happen. The safest thing is to be still and to freeze, and maybe the predator will show you mercy today. And it kind of, psychologically you're doing it, and I suspect, that's not science, anything I just said, it's just my opinion. Like, I think you're also sending a signal to your body, don't defend yourself.
And all this has only happened on month 4. Mm-hmm. What was month 5 like? Any better?
God, it was a living hell. She's a pro-social narcissist. So she's actually an animal rights activist and an environmental activist. But she bought, with her ex-boyfriend, pure breed dogs at 1,200 euros each from a breeder. And she was saying to everybody, oh, looking after dogs, looking after animals, it's so important. It was a 32 kilogram golden retriever living in a tiny flat with us in Sweden that she never fucking walked. Never. So she would be yapping all this about animal rights and looking after animals and looking after your dog properly. The only person who walked her fucking dog in 3 years was me. And I would say to her sometimes, like, I'd be like, you have to walk your dog. So she'd put him on a lead and take him out for 20 minutes on lead and bring him back. And I'd be like, that's a 32 kilogram animal. He needs off lead for an hour and a half. Do it again. No, not doing it. Not doing it. It's unnecessary. He's just an animal. He's fine. He's just an animal. Go and post on Facebook about how you feel about animal rights again. The same girl, she sent this dog.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast. Here's a word from our sponsor, Rocket Money. Many of our viewers have saved thousands using Rocket Money to save the money off subscriptions they didn't even know about. Rocket Money cancels subscriptions for people that are tricky and time-consuming. Rocket Money also alerts you to subscriptions that can save you money. Try it free for 30 days, just enough time to try it, and then completely forget about it. In fact, over 80% of people have subscriptions they forgot about. You could be wasting money and not even realizing it. Rocket Money helps you find those forgotten subscriptions so you can stop paying for ones you don't use. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. Stop throwing your money away, cancel unwanted subscriptions, and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/Shaun, S-H-A-U-N. That's rocketmoney.com/Shaun, rocketmoney.com/Shaun. Thank you for supporting our sponsor, Rocket Money. Enjoy the podcast.
We had been in a country, let's say Italy, and she wanted him from Italy back in the UK. I said, I'll go and drive and pick him up. And no, she hired somebody to do it. He went in a van with 10 other dogs. And I did not want this to happen, but it was her choice. When he arrived and was dropped off with me, he drank water from a bowl. And I think he drank like 3 bowls in one go. I was like, he's totally dehydrated, clearly terrified, clearly traumatized. He's a big, you know what retrievers are like. They're big, floppy,
huge.
sensitive
Yeah, my brother
things.
has one.
They're daft. Yeah. But they can be funny about their nails on metal. And I think he'd been kept on a metal floor. So he didn't even want to walk. He was trying to do this with his, I was heartbroken. The reason I'm telling you this is because public facing, this is the girl who'd be like animal rights all day. She'd lecture people. She'd stop people walking their dogs and tell them how to do it. And I'd be stood there going, are you fucking joking? Try looking after your own dog. Physically, he looked good. She'd groom him. She'd make his teeth clean. So everything that was public facing, that was dealt with. But actually giving him a good quality of life, she didn't give a shit. She didn't give a shit.
That's what some parents do with their children now.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
groom them up, make them look the part, but don't actually look after them.
Yes.
Internally.
This is like classic pro-social narcissism. So they want to be seen in a certain way publicly, but behind closed doors, they don't care.
I've never heard of pro-social narcissism.
Meghan Markle, and we're going to get to that.
Say, yeah.
So, Richard, in the early days, as it's getting worse and worse, do you
Back in a
feel...
past life, were you the guy on the gibbet that disemboweled people and then cut them open? Now remove his genitals. Oh, yes.
We're like a long, protracted story on this channel. Were you too ashamed to tell your family and friends?
Oh, God.
Did you feel
shame.
trapped?
Oh, that's where I went to with the dog. So you asked me what happened in month 4. I'd be walking the dog in Sweden on this hard Swedish frozen muddy ground, and I'd just be crying. I couldn't tell anyone. I was so ashamed. All my mates were like, oh, she's gorgeous. You've landed on your feet there, lads. You're punching above your weight there. Family's made up because she's sweet. She's got like this high-pitched voice and she's so feminine and she loves animals. All my family have got their dogs and they're into the environments and all that as well. They're all into, they're from the world. It's a thing there. They loved her. Everybody loved her. And I was behind closed doors going, she's an absolute bastard to me. But I was also thinking, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm doing this, which was the worst element of it. Was I started blaming myself and assigning responsibility to myself for my own abuse, which we know happens. We know happens with kidnapped victims. It happens with child abuse victims, victims of sexual assault. Because the abuse is so bad, it breaks down the ego boundaries to a level of infantilism where you don't have any boundaries as you wouldn't have done as a kid. It's not very nice saying this, but I'll go through it quickly to help people understand. If you're in a household where there's domestic violence and you're 3 years old and you see daddy hit mummy and you see daddy in a rage and mummy cries, as a 3-year-old, you're not thinking, I'm me, that's my mum and that's my dad, because you can't. You're boundaryless. You're you crying, pissing your pants, scared. You're your dad, you're your mum, and you're the house in which it happens, I claim. This is Richard's personal claim, because it's boundaryless. So we become the environment itself and it's all us. So there is no sense of like, well, I couldn't be possibly responsible because my father's an alcoholic and this is how his father, you don't think that when you're a kid. It's just distressing trauma. It's happening to me. And because it's happening to me, it is me. So automatically you assign blame to yourself. I did this. Even though you've got no agency, you didn't consent to it, you couldn't consent to it, you still end up blaming yourself. So as an adult, you wouldn't do that. And if it was a quick assault on the street, you won't. But if I take you to an environment where I control it, instead of having PTSD, which is a quick assault on the street, you blame the person, you say whatever, like if I control what you eat and when you sleep for a week, 2 weeks, it's no longer PTSD, it's now complex PTSD. Your ego boundaries break and you'll blame yourself. Even though rationally you know it's me, you'll still blame yourself.
Why do you think I cook your dinner every night?
we do have some therapeutic work to do.
All right, so the narcissist has got a grip.
Yeah.
What happens in the second year?
It's so embarrassing. I start to learn to live with this and I develop a skill of keeping her happy. I get good at it over time. I do things that I really, really don't want to do. I say things that I really don't believe and really don't want to say.
Like what?
Oh, fucking hell. Like what? Basically, anything that she said is how things work. If you went against it because you don't happen to believe that that is true, like I said, it could be a 2-day silent treatment. It could be a screaming rage. It could be God knows what. I've heard this from the difference between female and male narcissists, a lot of my female clients will say male narcissists withdraw sex. She never, ever withdrew sex from me. And I've never had a female narcissist, I've been with 3, withdraw sex. I don't know why there is this gendered difference. Men seem to punish women by withdrawing sex, but women, as far as I know, got no proper research, don't do that. And I think in a way, looking back, it was a way to keep me in a sort of a hypnotized, blissed out state. Because if that had happened, I probably would have had the sense to sober up.
Keep love bombing now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Keep me, in fact, it's a kind of trauma bonding, because I was enjoying sex with somebody who was abusive, and that's traumatic. It was humiliating.
One of the questions I have got is, can people, obviously narcissists struggle to fall in love. Can a narcissist make love?
In the sense that you mean no.
No.
But they
like
can
emotional?
No. And that's one of there would be a way of knowing whether you're dealing with a narcissist or not. I mean, making love, loving somebody requires intimacy, requires honesty, and requires vulnerability. I mean, it's just outside of a narcissist's capabilities. There's no way. But they could fake it to somebody who was impressionable. They're not good fraudsters. They're not good con artists. We all have to stop telling ourselves this. They're actually quite bad at it, but we want it to be true. So that's our part in it. We really want it to be true. So when they're doing a really bad job of convincing us that they're making love, we'll be like, wow, this is amazing. It's clearly not happening. But because you're lonely, because you're traumatized, because of unresolved issues that should be dealt with in therapy, you just want to believe that it's happening when it isn't.
Did you believe this girl in question was?
No.
So you knew it was?
She was a robot. She was a sex robot. It was humiliating. I knew perfectly well. I was teaching narcissistic abuse recovery at the time. I was teaching people how to protect themselves from this. I knew every single time that we had sex. She was hypersexual. She liked sex. She was enjoying it, and she was having an orgasm in her weird psychopathic way, because I don't know how much I could say on your podcast. She had fantasies that were non-consensual, and I knew that, and so she was getting what she wanted from me, and then I was getting what I wanted from her. It was so humiliating because I kept letting her do that. Like I was an active participant in it, but then afterwards I'd hate myself. And not for 1 second did I think, oh, she means this, or she loves me, or I knew she didn't. But I couldn't leave because of the social consequences of leaving. And I felt like this is as good as it's ever going to get for me. So it's her or no one.
And you couldn't speak to anyone about it?
I couldn't. Now, So you wanted to know what happened in year 2.
Yes.
At the end of year 2, this is a common thing that narcissists do. Her own narcissism caught up with her. Narcissists will tell you, it's called gaslighting. People have started misusing the term gaslighting, then they think it means lying. Gaslighting is not lying. Lying is a part of gaslighting. Gaslighting is a specific tool of emotional manipulation to make the target feel like they're losing their minds. So they will lie to you in a way that makes you feel like you're losing your grasp of reality. There's tons of gaslighting tactics, but one of them is to tell you you're crazy. You're crazy, you need therapy. And one day she went into a psychotic episode and she said, you're so crazy that by Monday you must have booked with a therapist and I want to see the booking form. So I went, okay, because it was all my fault. Everything that happened was all my fault. We'd moved to Dublin at the time. There was not enough grasshoppers in Italy. So I moved of course. So I moved my darling to Dublin, which is extremely fucking expensive for rents. Malahide, especially if you have a fucking dog. So I went £4,000, €4,000 a month it was. So she said, you have to have a therapist and you must go to therapy because you're a sex addict and you're a psychopath and you're just like your father and so on and so forth. My father always said he went to prison. This was a bit of a trigger for me. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe you're right, darling. Maybe I am a piece of shit. Let me do what it takes to make myself better. So I went to the therapist in Malahide, and I can't remember his name now, but if you just email me and I'll dig his name out. He's great. And it was the best thing she could have done, was tell me I was crazy and send me to that therapist.
You got someone to talk to finally.
Finally, yeah.
And he was laughed his fucking head off. He's like, oh, so you're the narcissist, are you? Okay, that's great. And he just pissed himself through the entire counselling session. I was like, could you stop? I'm paying you for this. And he was like, I know you from YouTube. How do you not know what's going on? And I went, fucking the shame and the humiliation. And I said to him, this is so humiliating. He said, oh, don't worry, I'm Catholic. And so we went through this whole process, and he said, there's no way you can't know this isn't narcissism. I said, no, I think this is PTSD and trauma. So he said, okay, here are the 9 traits of narcissism. If this girl is she ticking all 9 of them? I was like, 100% yes. So he said, okay, if she doesn't have narcissism, then that means narcissism doesn't exist. Would you agree? And I went, oh shit.
Can you remember the 9?
Yeah, I wanted to know.
The 9 traits of narcissism.
Yeah.
Oh, you're testing me now. Grandiosity, a strong sense of entitlement, extreme jealousy. We should probably look it up. So there's grandiosity, you're delusionally entitled. Envy, you're very attached to a false sense of yourself. I think you have to be prone to narcissistic injury and narcissistic rage. I can't remember. We'd have to look them up. But we went through the 9.
Has she cheated on you?
Oh God, I can't prove it. She definitely emotionally cheated on me.
Messaging someone else.
Messaging other people. She went away to do grasshopper research, and she'd somehow acquired the contact details of an air steward. Yes. I can't prove it. What I never asked before the relationship, because I just wouldn't ask that, was anything about her sexual history. But as I went across time and I analyzed what had happened, I was like, oh, this was a highly sexually promiscuous girl. No moral judgment, do whatever you like. But in her case, it was a manifestation of mental health issues. There is something called a sexual narcissist, and I believe that's what she is. So if she didn't, it's only because she didn't have the opportunity to whilst we were living together. I think as soon as she had the opportunity, she would have done.
How did you detect the messaging to these people?
Oh, I think you just know when, like, the phone usage and people like suddenly are doing this,
taking it to the bathroom,
taking it to the bathroom, doing this kind of strange stuff with the phone. Really, really strange stuff with the phone. Strange stuff with laptops. She was constantly accusing me of cheating.
Did you confront her
that's
about?
a classic sign, isn't it?
Classic sign. She was obsessed with that.
Did you confront her about the messages?
I did once, and I think we actually split up for a couple of months over one of the messages.
Did you think it was over at that point?
Did I? Kind of. I mean, I was dating other girls, and I did think we'd split up, and then she started. So embarrassing.
Sending you pictures.
Oh no, that I could live with.
Lingerie shot.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's how she drew me back in. She messaged me on some app. It was either Facebook or WhatsApp. One night, and we went from 12 o'clock at night till 5 o'clock in the morning, and she admitted everything she'd done wrong. And she said, I have narcissistic personality disorder. I'm really sorry. I've studied this. I've watched your videos. You're right. I was wrong. I apologize. I'm going to go to therapy, and I just need to see you. So I went to go and see her.
So she came to that conclusion herself. It wasn't, she went to a therapist and someone told her.
No.
She watched your videos.
Course in the first place because of an interest in narcissism.
Wasn't the what, sorry?
Wasn't she at your course in the first place because she was interested in narcissism?
Because her ex-boyfriend was a narcissistic psychopath, she said.
Okay. But really, that might have been a cover story.
I think actually, based on some of the stuff I saw of him and some of the emails he sent her, he probably was. But it's perfectly common for narcissistic psychopaths to get together with other narcissistic psychopaths.
And then who blames who, though?
They take turns eating each other's flesh. It's actually a more stable relationship format and has more longevity than narcissist and a codependent.
That's why we work.
Give me your flesh.
Now you know. Now you know. So all this confession that she went through, I can't remember which messaging or what social media she used it, but she got me to go and see her where she was in the country that she was at the time. We had sex a few times, and she went and deleted it all. And I said, after it was idyllic, you know, we got back together. I love you. I'm so glad that you've got the humility and the empathy to do this and to see that it wasn't just me, it was you. And she deleted all the messages. And then on the third day I was with her, she was like, what are you talking about? I said, you told me you were going to go to therapy. I'm not going to therapy. You told me you had narcissistic personality disorder. No, I didn't. And I was like, this is the day. This is the time. It was midnight. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. We spoke until 5 o'clock in the morning. I think you must have been drunk.
So she deleted them off her phone, but not yours?
She did. They were gone. So I don't know what messaging app she used, but one, maybe
Snapchat's great at that.
Telegram or Signal. You can delete the whole chat. And she deleted the whole chat, but we'd already had sex.
You should have screenshots.
Well, I was a younger man. Now I screenshot I keep receipts of fucking everything. Because even on WhatsApp, people can go back and delete stuff. But yeah, she denied it. She said, I'm not going to therapy. I don't need therapy. I do not know what you're talking about. And I was like, you have a problem. She said she'd been to a therapist in the European country she was in. And the therapist told her categorically there was no chance that she had narcissistic personality disorder. I said, what test did he do? No test. How did he come to that conclusion? We spoke for 45 minutes. I was like, okay.
Did she ever broach the subject of engagement, marriage, and life insurance?
Yes, she did. She broached
Asking for a friend, are you?
Broached it many, many times. I think in the last 5 months that we were together, once I went to therapy in Dublin with your man there, who sorted me out, she could feel me genuinely breaking away from the relationship. Not the sort of like, I'm not putting up with this anymore, but I'm totally going to put up with this kind of a thing. I genuinely was much calmer and was like, okay, I need to grieve because I'm just sad. I'm not angry. I'm like, this sucks. She got scared. And at that point, she started to demand that I have kids with her. At one point, she started going into the psychotic, much more open rages again. And I recorded her a couple of times. You have to give me children. I'm turning 30. If you don't get me pregnant within 5 months, then we're done. And I was like, why not just be done now? I don't love you and I don't want to be with you. Why don't we just break up now instead? And she's like, don't you fucking say that to me. You give me children. I was like, I've never been more aroused, my love. Please let me put a baby in you. So yeah, she did. She was demanding that in the end, yeah.
So when the doctor, the therapist in Ireland said these things to you and you withdrew, obviously what he said wasn't strong enough for you to just sever the cord.
Oh, well, I mean, I had done 2.5 years of utter insanity with her, and I don't think I did more. See, we would do one a week. Maybe I did 6 weeks with him. Then she insisted on us going to a couples counsellor. So as the Irish guy, I did 6 weeks one-on-one with him. Then we went to a couples counsellor who's a South African guy, and he clocked her straight away. It was great. Straight away, he clocked her. And so we did our session. And I called him the next day and he was like, you know what you have to do.
So he clocked her, but he didn't say anything to her at the time?
No, he didn't. He didn't. Fucking, oh God.
Thank God for that.
Strong flashback there.
What do you think he saw right away?
He just knew. He knew what he was looking at. I saw it on his face. He knew what he was looking at. And I called him and he said, I can't tell you anything that you don't already know. And he said, fuck. He said, you know what you have to do and you have to do it today. Do it now. When she comes home, do it now.
How'd that make you feel?
Fucking terrified. I can feel it now. I was like, fucking hell. I will remember for the rest of my life sitting in that living room. I'm a grown man, like, you know my background was self-defense. I had a world recognized brand in teaching fucking high-level military how to kill people and all that. Embarrassing, so shameful. I sat there in shock.